it comes to taking decisions, most of us try to figure it out, try to find what's best, try to decide based on facts, based on truths. And yet, if we look back at our life, very often, most of the things that we actually decided didn't go that way at all. So today on Sacred Conversations, we're going to find how you can live life from a place where we stop trying to hold it all together. Our mind wants us to somehow understand what we're doing, understand how to give an answer, understand what's reasonable, what's logical, what to listen to, what's wise, what's common sense. And the interesting thing is that if we look back at all the decisions of our life, very often you will find that most of those you just walked into, quite literally sometimes. Very, very simple example. When I was pregnant with our oldest child, Benjamin, the partner I was with at the time walked out when I was 8 weeks pregnant. I never heard from him again ever since, which is 21 years ago almost. And that's what happened. And I had this pregnancy all by myself, and I had my business and I was running it, and my mind was on top of everything. I knew what I was doing. I was making sure everything worked. My mind did not have a plan involving a new relationship. My mind had closed that lane for the next 5 years minimum. No men, no women, nothing was going to happen in my life because it was me and the baby until I met you, Jakko. And all of a sudden, I don't know why, but you walked in, and it turned out the door was open because you stayed with us ever since. Now, nothing in me, everything in me can come up with a story why that's great. All of my mind can talk about, yeah, that's great because. Truthfully, there were no becauses. You were there, and we somehow worked it out, but there was no logic to it. We can think of a lot of logic in hindsight. Same with many things. Same with moving to this place. There was a lot of logic to move here, a lot of logic to not do it. And somehow we started to walk a path, and that's just how it went. Now, the interesting thing is, if we stop trying to make it work in our mind, life gets a lot easier and a lot more attractive because we open ourselves to the spontaneous, to the unexpected. On the other hand, in a world where we're supposed to have it all together, where we're supposed to be solely responsible for every action that we have, or otherwise we go to jail or worse, that can be pretty daunting. So what we're going to talk about is one of the experiences that I had recently where I put a lot of decisions and things that I had to make in my business on anonymous pieces of paper where I could not see what I was standing on, to the point that I didn't even write the pieces of paper. Somebody else did, and I really didn't have a clue what I was standing on. And I allowed my body to inform me of my next steps over my mind. Now, in an exercise like this, and I'll describe it in a moment, I will let my body guide me from paper to paper and give me input. Now, of course, in the final decisions, my mind gets a say. Because if my mind is freaking out by a decision and I don't know how to calm my mind down, then sometimes that's not the right decision either. But what we're going to talk about in this entire episode is how to find that divine thread, how to find God back into our life, God being, in this case, the unexpected voice of clarity, of I don't know why, I can't explain why, but I'm going left, and that's just where I'm going, where we can support ourselves in that step, even though we don't have a clue what that step involves. Before you say anything, I just want to say one thing, and that is that a lot of us think that we would know what would have happened if we would have taken the other path, which is not true in any case, because our mind might think, yeah, but if I would have stayed in the other house, then this and that and that and that would have happened. You don't know. Maybe a bomb would have fallen on that house. Maybe a neighbor would have died. Maybe we don't know. So as much as our mind thinks it can work out all these scenarios, it really can't. So we're going to talk about how to refine that connection of trust, of God, of divinity, where we can just walk without our mind trying to consistently hold it all together. So I'll describe the exercise that I just did in a moment, and Jakko was there. He was guiding me through it. But I'm really curious what your thoughts are around this before we do that.
No, first that comes up is that I recognize this mind thing to make all the decisions. So should I have a driver's license, and when should I have it, but then should I have a car even if I not really need it because I'm on bicycle distance from my work, and what kind of car, and don't I buy the wrong car because this one is a second-hand car and the other one is newer and less distance driven already with, and so it's all the things I wanted to control them all always. I never could decide because I couldn't know all the details, and I could really be very hard on myself if someone went wrong, because I thought, okay, where did I make the wrong decision and made that I'm here now in this position?
How did you end up with me?
So there has been
that's the real question
a moment
here.
in my life.
We're quite opposites. If you've been following our podcast, you might be aware of that. If this is your first episode, then this is your first introduction to Jakko, my husband, in almost everything my polar opposite.
And you know my family, my sisters, and so you know how they are. And I was exactly like that. We're from the same nest, and
yeah, but
so
our
I
listeners don't know your family. So explain
No.
a little bit. If you introduce other people, you need to explain them.
Yeah, so very cautious and taking a lot of time up to be sure that this is really the right decision and there cannot be any mistake in it. And so
let's leave life out of the equation.
Yes, exactly. So in hindsight, you cannot say, oh, this was the wrong decision. I should have known better. So to prevent this, it's really it's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. You can't make the wrong decision, and then if something happens, it wasn't your fault. So then you can truthfully feel sorry for yourself because that was just bad luck.
Yeah, so I had to bang myself on the head a lot.
That's why you're bald.
Yeah. Exactly. So
now I know where your hair went.
And especially also decisions where money is involved. So I couldn't make a wrong decision when that meant that it was a risk of losing money. So buying a house was really such a almost impossible decision. I was in a relationship with my girlfriend from that moment, and she had already her own house. But when we moved to another city, we rented a house for a year, and then she said, "Okay, we have to look for another house to buy one," and I couldn't decide, so we didn't, and in the end we broke up. So maybe in the end it was a good decision to not buy a house together. But it was a heavy burden to decide.
For the attentive listeners, he is very trickily avoiding the question how he ended up with me, right?
Yeah, yeah. So there came a certain moment in my life that I couldn't go on with this behavior. That was impossible. So there's been a lot of transformation from then.
And by the way, that was not a thought that he woke up with thinking, hey, do you know what? I don't want to go on like this. Let's find a girl who's the opposite and just see what that brings. That's not how it went. How it went is we met. A week later, he moved in. None of us had a clue why or how. But to come from a place of that amount of control and logic, and you need to understand everything, to meet somebody who was 8 months pregnant at the time, and to move in with her and to just introduce that to your family, that's a big thing. And I wasn't aware of that at the time because I actually thought it was completely normal to just do whatever you felt like doing. That's how I lived. And I didn't have a clue why that was hard for you.
But it wasn't hard. That's the funny thing of the story. That it felt hard to explain to my family, but it wasn't hard at all to move in with you and be together and within a year marry and have another child. And so that felt very natural.
Yeah.
And it was also a relief from being so in control towards maybe I thought that for the first time I was really living from my heart and doing things differently.
And living from a deep permission to listen to your internal certainty and your internal divine thread.
And it sounds very beautiful, but a few later I regretted this decision as well. So.
Why? You did not regret that decision.
So it wasn't from then.
From then onwards, it was a magical fairy tale. No, that's not true either.
So it's not that I changed overnight and never came back to my old upbringing. So it's not that
you got
easy.
a glimpse of what it could look like for a year and a half, and then your old programming started to say, hey, I'm still there.
Yeah.
And that's when we had really tough years. This is, by the way, where most couples break up, where I think all of our friends, I don't know one friend who did not call us and say, guys, divorce is okay. You know that, right? And
also my friends.
Yeah, exactly. And we said, no. Divorce would be too easy. There's something here that I'm staying for, and I don't know what it is. Nobody understood. And in hindsight, I think 4 years later, both of us knew that we found the way back to that divine thread, together, helping each other. But most people are so holding on to their survival patterns, or the survival patterns, the programming and the not wanting to move back into that divine thread in this situation, that breaking up is easier, and they're just looking for a partner who is able to allow them to stay in that divine space at all times, which is impossible. Now, this wasn't going to be a relationship podcast, even though we might talk about this a little bit more. If you are listening to this and you have questions, just send them to us. We're more than happy to talk about this again from a relationship topic, and we might here and there navigate in and out of it. But I don't want to dilute everything that we're going to talk about. What I said we were going to talk about is how to find God, and I was going to share the exercise with the pieces of paper. So basically, let me share that exercise, and then we'll talk again. And then in that conversation, we might get into the relationship topic again. We'll see. Every 3 months, what I do is I spread out all the aspects of my life, my business and things, and sometimes it's 35 pieces of paper, sometimes it's 5, and I spread them out through the floor of our office. Now, that's a big floor, so we have a lot of space, but sometimes I would do this in a holiday home on an island on my own, and then I'd have a really small floor. It doesn't have to be big. I just spread out all these pieces of paper, not knowing or spreading them out in a way that I can't see what they are. So if there's 30 pieces of paper, I'll shuffle them up and not know. This time, I asked Jakko and somebody on my team to write them for me. So not even did I not know what I was going to stand on, I didn't have a clue what they wrote down. So they created, I think it was 8 pieces of paper. I came back in the room. I didn't have a clue what they thought I needed to get some answers from. And we spread them out through the seminar room, which is quite a big room. It's 10 by 10 meters. So it's 100 square meters. And there's some furniture here and there, but not a lot even. So we spread them out. And then what happens is I let my feet guide me to a piece of paper. Sounds very woo-woo, I know. I've done this
First, you spread them out.
Yeah, first you spread them out, not knowing what is where and why. It's intuitively. And then I let my feet guide me to a piece of paper. That sounds incredibly woo-woo, I know. Maybe it is. But the interesting thing is what happens is that when I stand on one of these pieces of paper, my body will start to tune in to what is there. Now, if you've never done an exercise like this, you might feel an urge to now stop the podcast. Don't do that, because I'm going to share with you what happens there. So on one piece of paper, and I do this with clients who've never done any of this work, it works every single time. On one piece of paper, my feet froze. I was completely nailed to the ground. I couldn't move. I could speak, but everything in me wanted to shut down, close, not say a word. And I felt this just freeze state. And I couldn't move, I couldn't say anything, I couldn't think, nothing would come. On another piece of paper, I felt an incredible urge to lie down. So I did. And once I laid down on the floor, my whole body started to let go, started to release, started to relax in a depth that I have rarely come across. On another piece of paper, I felt like, okay, this is really interesting. I can absolutely do this. But if I do this, there's nothing else going to happen. All the rest of the piece of paper are distraction. I can't do this. On another piece of paper, I couldn't stop looking at a specific plate filled with delicious cake and coffee and beautiful things. And there was deep urge to surround myself with good things in life and not listen to any distraction. So on every piece of paper, something else happened. Now the interesting thing is that I was incredibly curious to the piece of paper where I would lie down and relax and drop everything. Turns out, once I opened the pieces of paper and looked at what was there, there was something that for the life of me, I would not have dreamt of doing. What was on that piece of paper was me talking about big topics like war, like femicide, like geopolitics, like sustainability. If you would have asked me, why don't you talk about those topics in your podcast? I would have started laughing hysterically and I would have said, no, I'm not going to do that. Ever. Like, no, I don't talk about these topics. To my mind, that's been a choice that I make because I teach people how to feel safe in your system and how to reset your nervous system. And I might have opinions about a lot of topics, but I'm also deeply curious to other people's opinions. So even if I have an opinion, I want to know a topic from all angles and I want to deeply understand what's going on in the other person. And I don't have a need to state my opinion on social media or anywhere for that matter, because the work I do is not about my opinion. It's about holding space for other people's emotions, and it's about allowing people to feel safe to share theirs. And even though I might have an opinion, I don't think it's interesting necessarily to hear mine. But now I have this information of deep relaxation, of deep letting go on that piece of paper. Now, of course, we can then think, oh, you know what? I can't explain this. Nothing to do with each other. I wasn't going to do this, and discard it. And I didn't. What I did was, wow, what the actual fuck is happening here? I don't want to talk about these things. And my entire body started to relax when I was on them. What's going on here? What's the incongruence here? And I started journaling around it and walking, taking walks here on the driveway and in nature, thinking, why am I so adamant about not doing this while my entire body started to relax? And I realized a big thing. And the big thing I realized is that my mind doesn't want to ruffle any feathers for other people. I see a lot of people getting big lashback over stating their opinions on social media. There is a lot of noise out there in the world. And basically, I'm terrified of showing my version of God, of showing who I actually am, of really being seen. And I'm not terrified of being on stage. I'm not terrified of sharing my own personal journey. I'm not terrified of sharing my own personal vulnerability. But talking about these topics that I believe the world needs us to talk about, I'm not going to go first, was what my mind says, because that's too risky. And I realized something big, and that is that's the next level of my system needing safety for me, for all of me. And if I can create a place inside of me where it feels safe to not censor myself about anything, then that will add to the work I do. It will add to the world. It will add to this space. That's why my entire body started to relax there, because if I can let go of any need to be safe other than feel safe inside myself. The last episode, we talked about sexuality, femininity, femicide, school shootings. I realized that my entire body knows of these things and is trying to control it and trying to keep it outside of me. And when I was lying on that piece of paper, I realized if I want to belong into this world, I need to feel safe saying everything. That doesn't mean that everybody needs to feel safe sharing all of their opinions. It does mean that if something is important, and if I teach people to share who they are, then every layer of unsafety in me should be addressed. If we talk about trying to hold everything together, this was an edge where I'm trying to hold things together. Same with the piece of paper where my entire body started to freeze and couldn't move and couldn't do anything. And the interesting thing is, if I stand on that piece of paper, now I know what was on it. And what was on it was sharing the way I read the Bible, because when I read the Bible, I read it in a very different way than most preachers or pastors. I have not grown up with the Bible. I have not grown up religious. And I look at these stories from a very different perspective. I use them in a very different perspective. The logical thing would be to think of, oh yeah, don't use that in your podcast. That's not interesting in your marketing because you're freezing there. But when I started to journal about it, I realized that I don't necessarily feel safe sharing my vision on biblical matters because I didn't grow up with it. I do know that it is extremely helpful, and it's an extremely helpful way of thinking about Bible and religion for people who've been hurt by it. And I do feel that there will be a time where my way of sharing that is going to be incredibly important. But my whole body freezing feels like, yeah, there's an edge there. where I can do a lot of deep work around allowing myself to step into what sparks joy in me over trying to hold it together. These pieces of paper share two aspects, and I'm just going to share these two. There's 8 pieces of paper, so there's more to say about it, of where I am secretly trying to hold things together instead of just allowing myself to move. The interesting thing when we talked about our relationship was the woman you met there, I was just moving. I was just, oh, I'm pregnant. Oh, he's leaving. Oh, this is happening. Oh, you know what? I'll just move. And if things got too hot under my feet, I would physically move. I would buy another house. I would move cities. Nothing was going to stop me from being me. But there was one thing that I couldn't do at that time, and that was stay in connection with the people. So when we talk about our relationship, yeah, I was completely free following my own feet. I wasn't completely comfortable sharing that. You were completely controlling, and you weren't allowing yourself to move with that freedom. So in the 4 years later, what we did is I learned to stay with you, despite all the discomfort that sparked. And you learn to let go of all your survival patterns. And now, 20 years later, there is a new edge, and that is I am not willing to lose my business. I am not willing to change who I am. I am not willing to sacrifice my family or move over the world or change what I've built with so much care and devotion. So the risk of sharing these topics feels so daunting that I feel this edge of, can't I just keep what I have? So these pieces of paper help me find where there is a level of unsafety in me that really needs to be addressed in order to re-find God and move with the divine connection.
Yeah, if you say divine connection and God, I think for me the translation is to do whatever I'm here for in life. To really totally be who I'm meant to be.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's beautiful, because it's not about getting more religious or something. It's
absolutely not.
It's about really going the way that you're pushed to, if you let go of all control.
Yeah. And all fear. Yeah, and that's actually not always. So if you,
Sounds easy.
the woman you met 20 years ago looked like that, because I was never taking anybody into account and I was just moving. But that's not true, because in hindsight, every single time I was feeling loved, I would move, because I didn't know how to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't free at all. I wasn't free to stay. I was only free to keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an entirely different kind of freedom. I didn't have freedom of choice, because choice means you can choose to stay. And I didn't have that ability. I've built it. And now there's a next level. And that next level is, am I free to really share my views, share about big topics and what I might think about those? And the interesting thing is, we were talking about taking decisions, and we're talking about unapologetically moving. And there's one thing that I realized over the past 51 years, and that is that means moving without explaining. And not necessarily moving house or moving countries, but just moving your feet without always having the rationale, without always involving your mind being able to explain, without always understanding why you're moving either. Same as when we met. I didn't know. I went for a walk and you asked if we could meet, and I said, sure, take a walk with me. I didn't know why. And it changed both of our lives. And I think in hindsight, every single second, the fact that we are recording this podcast now is changing our life, not just because of the content, but also because we're not in the supermarket talking to the cashier who's sharing whatever she was going to share with us. We're not doing anything else than this. So this moment is defining the next chapter. And that is true in every single second. We can't look back at our life thinking, oh, if I would have taken a different turn there. It's pretty useless exercise because we didn't.
So first we didn't, and so we are where we are now. But the other one is you never know what would have happened, so there's no compare.
There's no way you could ever compare because you really don't know. You really don't know. Yeah. And that's actually, I was talking to a client last week, and she was trying to decide whether she was going to join a certain program. And then she asked me a question saying, but should I choose this or that? And I forgot to ask you. And I said, I can't make that decision for you, first of all, because it's your life. Second of all, it doesn't matter. Because you're going to do one, so choose one. Just choose. Just do. And she said, but how will I know if it was the right? And I said, you won't. You will never. Yeah. You will never get that answer. So the best we can do is stop asking that question. But what if? What if is a shit question. Because you will never know. You find yourself doing something, be in it, and answer to it.
I know it's almost stupid to think that you can know the answer, but I lived for more than 30 years like this. So
35. I met when you were 35.
So I can see now how there's no answer, and
there's never going to be
for so long
answer.
time I've been looking for these answers and did all the burdens of doubting, and even when I made the decision, even then more doubting if it was the right decision, and did it work out well, and even when I'm in a restaurant and have to choose from the cart, I still have the feeling that after I chose, I should have done.
You should have done the other one.
Yeah. So it's still here, but
yes.
It's different for the more important decisions, and so.
Is it?
No, it's yeah, it is, of course. Yeah, I wouldn't sit here if it was different, but if I was still on the old pattern, then I wouldn't sit here. That's for 100% true. But it's not completely gone, and I think that's also it goes for the most adaptations that and coping mechanisms that I have developed in life as a child, that for some I hope they will be gone forever, but it isn't true, because it's deep, but I can really see them as what they are. So I can.
What are they?
No, this is a very clear one. So the decision making and not making mistakes, and
yes.
So yeah, I can name a lot of others, but this is a very good illustration.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that if you would look at them from a different perspective, you could see them for what they really are, and that is a doorway. Because all this crap of, but what if, and I'm so stupid, and I should have done that. If we stop the dialogue mid-sentence, and we pause, and we look at, wow, I'm blaming myself for something that I should have known that I couldn't have known, or that I can't know, and I'm trying to figure it out instead of just trusting myself, then that is the doorway. If we can allow ourselves to pause in that second where we catch ourselves, just pause the conversation in our mind and allow the emotions, then it becomes a doorway to building that certainty. This is, by the way, what the Sabotage Relief Program is about, if you're ever interested in it, and the Sacred Reset as well. But it's pausing, stopping the conversation, knowing that that conversation is only trying to do one thing. That conversation is only trying to make us feel safe. It's only trying to share with us where we don't feel safe yet. And if we can see that as a doorway to building the safety that we lack, then that is how we build certainty, how we build trust in ourselves, how we allow ourselves to stop reasoning and start walking. But that doorway is not what we learn in school. It's not what is the norm. The norm is to figure it out. But ultimately, I've never learned anything in my life by thinking about it. I've learned things in life by walking on it, by moving with it, by walking on the beach. Basically, my whole life is me walking on the beach. And then
Yeah, but I think it's more. There's much more to it, because it starts with a pause, and then there's a doorway. But for me, it meant that, and even now, sometimes I need to process the fear that comes with it. So,
Yes.
and it can be with a lot of sorrow, and a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And
We need to
stay
allow
with
that.
it. And that's not an easy process. It's not that you do it in just a few minutes, and then
No, true.
you're
No, true.
you're there.
But you do need to, in that process of allowing the pain, allowing the sorrow, allowing the guilt, what your mind will consistently do is move you into a conversation of why. And we consistently need to stop the conversation and feel the feelings. Stop the conversation, allow the feelings. And that means that you consistently need to feel that it is safe to feel those emotions, feel those sensations without understanding them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And most therapy and most coaching sessions will just help you to understand them.
Mm-hmm.
And the understanding won't get you anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be held without trying to create any story.
No, and I think a lot of therapy is giving you manuals how to deal with things. But if you need all the manuals in your head while you're living, and by knowing, oh, this is asking me to do this manual,
Yeah, how to deal with or how to prevent.
or prevent,
Yeah.
But
Whereas,
preventing is maybe what you already did, because one of the coping mechanisms is preventing them to happen, and like making difficult choices.
yeah, but sometimes, so last week we talked about relationships big time and about patterns between men and women. But one of the things that I've learned in a lot of coaching is to make better choices in partnerships, or to respond differently to my partner. But that wasn't the problem. Well, and maybe it was a little bit, but the biggest problem was that I couldn't allow myself to feel while somebody else was present. And that can still be hard. But if we can allow ourselves to feel in certain situations without needing to understand whatever we're feeling, that is going to lead to us building internal safety.
Yeah. I think the mind is building this coping mechanisms, and it's
Yes.
not it's not the same mind that is going to let them loose. So let them go,
Exactly. Yeah.
because that's the safety part.
Yeah, and a lot of things that we try to do that feel very reasonable, like I had a real good story why I was not going to talk about these big topics on a podcast because, and then there, after the because, were all kinds of rationale around, and that's not why people come to me. I'm not a political organization, which I really am not. It's not interesting because there's a lot of becauses. But ultimately, that was not the reason. And I'm not sure how I will talk about these things. And maybe I will find myself not talking about them a big time. But I realized that I need to allow my body to relax in those conversations before I can even make a choice. Because now there wasn't a choice. It was this is something I'm not going to burn my fingers on. And then the rationale sounds incredibly tear-jerking story of, no, of course you shouldn't do that. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was my body doesn't feel safe doing it. So now the interesting thing is that our body feeling unsafe isn't a problem. It's a doorway to the next level safety. So if we want to live life from a place of allowing our feet to move, we need to allow our feet to find where they want to go without our mind constantly trying to decide or share or find any rationale. If we look at little kids, it's pretty easy, right? They just walk where they walk and they take everything off the shelf and they start exploring. I'm not saying we need to be like little kids, but I heard John Cleese say something beautiful. He said, creation isn't a process that we can describe. It's just curiosity, free roaming. It's like, I wonder what will happen if I put blue here. It's not I'll put blue here. That's going to look really beautiful. It's just, I wonder what will happen next. I wonder what will happen next. I wonder what will happen next, without any sense of punishment or restriction. It's just plain curiosity, and that is what life should be. But it's only what life can be if we create a safety of allowing ourselves to deal with any consequences after that action. Because if we're painting and we use blue and we ruin a painting, yeah, that might be very sad because the paint costs money, but that's it. But if we take a misstep in today's society, we could lose our business. And this is also why being an entrepreneur or being a leader feels so incredibly lonely. I had a client last week who came to us, and my work is based in deep connection and being human together. And I shared something with her, and that fell in the wrong bucket in her. Now, that should be okay, because we can very often say things from a good intention that don't sit right with the other person. And luckily, we had the relationship where we can share this, and she can share what that did with her, and I can share my intentions, and still it can be disruptive, and that would have been okay too. But it's incredibly important to see that we built a society of eggshells. We built a society where we're solely responsible for everything. But living together in a community on this planet means that we can't be responsible for everything. So then there's an easy thing of, yeah, well, if that triggered you, that's your thing, which is also not true. We're here together, and can we hold space for each other and be curious and listen and connect and not constantly abandon ourselves on the other person's behalf or expect the other person to abandon themselves. And it isn't even about my truth or your truth or everybody's truth or being disrupted or being triggered. It's about, can I feel safe with what's happening inside of me, even if that doesn't feel safe at all? Can I feel safe to feel all of what's going on in me, knowing that that it's safe to live this life where in many occasions it's actually very unsafe inside of me?
That's difficult, I guess, to grasp For but, and I would say that for me it means that I've got still a lot of fears. It's not that I
Yeah.
never fear something, but it's a kind of fearing a certain scenario coming up for the future, but I still know that even if it happened, I could help myself, and I could live in a certain way
Yes.
that it would be okay as well,
Yeah.
or that I could find my way from there.
Yeah.
And that's really different from how I looked at life
Yes.
more early on,
Yeah.
from child on. So that's
Yeah, and I think it's incredibly important to catch ourselves in these patterns, and not just in these patterns, but really look at, am I truthfully saying no to something because it doesn't feel right, or am I unconsciously trying to prevent it from happening because there's fear in my system? And this is incredibly important, because if we want to become all that we're here to become, if we want to live our full potential, we can't let these silent fears run our life. We can't let this sense of controlling life, even secretly, hold us back. We can't say, well, I'll be free when I have enough money, because, first of all, that's not the way to earn a lot of money. But also, there is no God in that. You won't feel fulfilled in that. And I work with a lot of people who have a lot of money. And if you don't feel free to lose it all, then you won't feel free when you have it all. I'm not saying everybody should lose everything all the time, but we should allow ourselves to constantly step forward, discovering where the next layer of potential really is. Because ultimately, us feeling safe in our own system is the only way to find our way out of all these control patterns.
what I'm thinking about now is that I've listened to a lot of interviews with people. I think they succeed in what they do or what they try to do, and they're really successful in not financially, especially. Sometimes they do, but and in all these stories, or a biography of, but in all these stories, it's always about working hard, or having such a passion or desire to get somewhere that they try and never give up. There's a lot of this in the stories, but that's the part we know already. But there's always a big aspect of coincidence.
Yes.
So it's not always where they are now that they were directed
Exactly.
their lives to.
Exactly.
But they're still on a very beautiful position.
Yes.
But they, and even
They didn't
I don't
figure
know
it
if
out.
they allowed the coincidence to be there, but there was coincidence. They met some people. They came in a specific situation,
Yes.
or there was an opportunity. They didn't look for. They were not looking for this opportunity, but
Exactly.
they did it. And
Yes.
so,
Yes.
what I learned from that is, yeah, you can try to point out your life in a certain direction and go for your own goals. It's very specific. What you really want to do in life. But if you're in that direction and you're not open for the opportunities that are on your way as well, it's the question if you're gonna get there for the first time, in the first place. But in the second place, it's also maybe there were some other very beautiful things that can happen as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even that, right? I had ideas around relationships and around my business that, to a certain degree, I think we created together. But we didn't create it from a place of how I thought it should be created. I just had an idea and I had a feeling and I had a sense, and we ended up there, but we didn't end up there through a logical path or through oh yeah, then we do this and then we do that and then we do that. That might be how you build a ship, of first weld these things together and then put this together and then that and then there's a ship. That makes sense for certain things. It makes sense for a cake to not randomly throw things in a pot, but follow certain specific order of things. Because if you put the egg in the oven, it might never lead to a cake if you don't mix it in with the flour and the milk. So certain things work in that logical way, but life doesn't. And if we constantly connect with our goals and our visions and then just move our feet will be moved to that thing that we want, but never in a way that's logical to our mind. So what we really need to do is allow ourselves to feel so safe in our body that we will allow ourselves to move even if there's old unsafety coming up, old weird stuff coming up. One of the things that the exercise with the floor anchor or the piece of paper that we did last week brought me is that I was realizing that I have a lot more to say than I am saying. And that if I want to reach the next level of certain things in my business, it is not going to be because more people from the outside find their way to me. It's because I show up in a very different way, not showing up from the place of speaking in very different places, maybe even, although that could be part of it, but it's also me taking a stance, having a viewpoint on things. And that's incredibly scary for me. And my feet moved me to that place. So decisions aren't always logical. I would say they never are. If you feel, after having listened to this, that you could do with a thing or two around really feeling deeper trust, really feeling how you could trust your body and let go and have a foundation of certainty where you could just allow yourself to move without all this brain conversations going on around in your head, then the Sacred Reset is for you. That's a 24-hour program where for 24 hours you come here and there's a really solid 9 hours of sleep in the 24 hours, of course, as well. There's beautiful food, and we really create a foundation in you where peace is the logical foundation in your system, where your nervous system gets a reset, and where your sacred truth starts to emerge. If there's anything in this episode that you want to respond to, you want to act on, you have questions about, or you have something you want to share with us, by all means, send us an email or a direct message on any social media platform. Share this, talk about it with friends, and let us know all your questions. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I can't wait to hear from you next week. Bye.
Bye.